So the other day, I interviewed Joma Tech, who's a tech YouTuber slash a former data scientist who worked at Facebook and BuzzFeed. And in this part of the interview, we talked about his transition from data science to software engineering, as well as his life and career in general. So let's just dive into it. So my first question is, I understand that you decided to switch from data science to software engineering. Could you tell us why you decided to make that switch?
Yeah, so I think I reached a point where, well, I guess it gets a little bit personal. Like when I was working at Facebook, there was a time where I kind of just like burnt out because of like videos and work, and the reason was there's like two reasons. I'll do the work first. For the work, it was because like it was getting like a little bit harder. We did a project that was a bit more stressful because like there's huge implications for what we did, and like monetary implications. So, and then I also like switched teams, like switched sub teams, and there were a lot of reorgs on my team. So that kind of made like things not super stable. And then for videos, I think I was at a point where I felt like I was too pressured to do, like I added too much artificial pressure to myself, saying like, oh, I should make this video at this time every week, for example, at like Thursdays. But the issue of that is, especially when you're working with sponsors or you have friends or you have a life, it's kind of hard to meet the deadline exactly at that time, right? Because there's a lot of factors. So then I think at one point I just got like burnt out a little bit, and then I kind of took a break. But that break allowed me to think about my life in a more holistic way. And then because I had more time to think about it, I was like, like maybe data science is not right for me. Maybe video is not right for me. You know, I started asking a lot of questions. And then at that point, I thought, okay, in 5 years, or imagine if I want to work on something for 5 years, do I want to be a really good data scientist, like analytics, or do I want to be really good as a software engineer? I was like, software engineering sounds cooler because you can actually build stuff. And I thought to myself, like, imagine in a situation where I had to work for a startup, or I want to do my own startup, what would be more useful? Me being able to build the product myself, or me being able to analyze like data myself? But the thing is, for me, I think like when you're doing a startup, it's very easy to get insights from the data in the beginning, because all you care about is like, oh, what's the retention of the users? How many new users are getting? Are they using this feature? Nothing complicated, right? So getting more skills for data science doesn't translate well to being a very effective worker at a startup.
Right.
So I thought being a software engineer might be more fitting to me. And then the other reason is just like I feel like I want to build things because I've always been like that. And I also had a CS degree, so I might as well, use it. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like your like ultimate goal, long-term goal, is to do a startup or work at a startup.
Back then, yes. Now, like, I'm not that sure anymore because I've grown, I've changed, and then yes, like if I can do a startup, yes, but it's not my ultimate goal. But I do think about it sometimes. Like it's just in case I want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think another thing you mentioned is that you like building things. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So like not in the software related realm. When I was a kid, I used to play these games, and sometimes there are like these mini games within games where you could like build things, and it's pretty useless. Like it's not even part of the normal story. Like for example, Kingdom Hearts, you could build like your spaceship and stuff like that. And I just really like building that spaceship, and then just see, I don't know, it's just like, yeah, I used to like playing with like Legos. I used to like tinkering with things. There was something called like Rain Meter. It's on Windows, is where you could like make your own widgets on your desktop, and I just like to make things nice, or like useful. And yeah, so I think in my mind, also videos, right? Like videos is also something that you kind of build and create, because so, and I also like Photoshop. I used to like making new images out of like multiple images and stuff like that. So I thought to myself like, I was always like a builder kind of a guy. maybe software engineering is for me. Yeah.
So you felt like in data science, you weren't doing enough building.
Yeah, no, you don't build anything at all, because like, especially what I was doing, yeah, nothing you do is really permanent. You usually just do something, do an analysis, or basically do something such that you could convince other people to build stuff, but you never actually build your own thing. Especially at a big company where data engineering is already all done, all the pipelines are done. All you have to do is just get some data and like spit out insights. Like, yeah, you don't build anything.
That sounds pretty frustrating for you.
It depends, because like some part of me do like doing analysis and like understanding the product inside out, because I really like to spend time and understand users. So that was fun. And but yes, it sucks that there's nothing that I can show for. Right? I can't be like, oh yeah, I built that, or like I did this, you know. So yeah, so I think that's the reason.
I see. So it sounds like you liked some of the things that you were doing as a data scientist.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But there were like these other things that you missed.
Right.
Okay. And when you said that you took a break, what do you mean by that? Was it like a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think I took 2 weeks off, like, of work, and then I also, I still kept, I kept making videos also, but then at one point I stopped making videos for like months, and then I also went to work, but then I also like took a lot of vacation during work, so I was literally doing like nothing, right? Kind of like now, you know. Yeah, so I was doing like nothing, so that's the break that I was taking.
I see.
Yeah.
And then eventually you decided to take the leap and leave your job.
Pretty much, yeah.
What was that
process
like? Yeah.
So at first, like, I didn't think about leaving my job directly. I was thinking about like, oh, maybe I could switch teams, you know, because maybe the problem isn't the job, maybe it's like the team or something like that. So I thought about switching teams. I thought about doing like internal transfer to software engineering and stuff like that. And in the end, like the one that would make me the most money would be if I switch companies to do software. So that's like why I chose that. And I just want to say, like, it's like usually I wouldn't quit my job before getting like another job in hand, because I think that's pretty risky, especially for someone, if you're like on a visa, for example, then you have a limited time before you get like kicked out of the country. So I would advise against that. The reason that I did it is because I was pretty confident in terms of like, because of my connections, because of like my studying, and I did study during the time I was still working at Facebook, and I was still like practicing coding and stuff like that. And I did do a few interviews, right? I just haven't like accepted an offer yet. So I was pretty confident that I will get a job in a short amount of time. So that's why I was able to quit kind of early on. And the reason why I quit pretty early was because I kind of want to start my vacation like pretty early. Yeah.
Right. And you know, you mentioned that you started practicing software engineering interviews. How did you prepare for them?
Right. Leak code.
Leak
Yeah.
code.
So the first thing I did was like, I just started like opening Leak code. I bought a premium membership, and then I just, you know, started practicing easy questions first. And I just did them, grinded them. I did like 1 or 2 per day because I wanted to take it slow, right? Because I was still working at Facebook, but I'll take it. I took it slow, so I just did like 1 or 2 questions a day, and then right before an interview, I would do a lot of them. I would do a lot of them beforehand, and then I also bought like elements of programming interview, so that complemented my my leak coding sessions. And then also one thing I did was people told me to, well, like I read blind a lot, and they told me to practice like whiteboarding. Unfortunately, I don't have a whiteboard, so I just take like a piece of paper, I take a pen, and then usually I try to solve it on the paper first and then write on the computer, and then yeah, that's it.
Would you like run the code or just write? Okay.
Yeah, on LeetCode you could run the code. So yeah, so I would write it like on paper, and then I would just copy it on the code, and then I would run it and then see if it's good or not.
I see.
Yeah. And then for system design, I just read a lot. I read something called Grokking the System Design Interview, where they have like these simulation questions where they're like, oh, try to build Instagram or like build Twitter. And then I would read how they did it, you know, like load balancers, blah, 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 and stuff like that, databases. And then whenever I don't understand something, they have a link to click into like different database type, like not like SQL database, relational versus non-relational. And then you just get more and more knowledge, and then that's how you can answer these questions. Yeah.
Would you recommend someone else go through the same path and use the same resources?
Yeah, I think so. I think it worked. It was working pretty well for me. Yeah.
Nice. And so you started preparing for those interviews. You left your job. You kept preparing for those interviews. And how was that? Can you tell us about like how the whole process was like to interview, get offers, and maybe like negotiate?
Right. Yeah. So I'll talk about like a few interviews, but basically how it looks like is like once you feel like you're pretty confident in your coding skills, then what you do is you start applying. But usually what happened for me was that I got kind of lazy, so I applied, and then they tell me like, okay, let's schedule a phone screen or on-site, and then that's like a deadline for me. So that's when I start actually preparing. Anyway, so they do phone screens usually, and then you prepare for that. You do a few coding questions, and then once you do the phone screen, if you pass it, then they usually put you into like an on-site interviews. And usually during on-site interviews, there's like 5 or 6 interviews. It's super long. One of the longest one I've had was like from like 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. Wow. I think it was like 6 interviews and 1 lunch interview. It was so freaking long. Like my throat started to hurt towards the end. Yeah. So then after the on-site, you wait and you hope that the recruiter sends you a congratulation email. And then if they do, that's awesome. For some companies, it might be slower. Some companies it might be faster. And then usually what they do is that they might ask you like, before the interview, they might ask you like, what kind of compensation do you expect to have? Usually I would say something like higher than what you currently have, just so that you can, at least get a boost. And then, they also ask you like, are you interviewing with other people? They always ask that. The reason why they ask that is because if you are, they might expedite the process. They might make it faster. And then once you get that information and they say that you have an offer, that's where they give you the numbers. They usually give you like a base compensation, bonus, and then also equity. And so you get that number. Sometimes, or actually most of the time, you can just ask for more. Even if you have like no counter offers, for some reason like they would just be okay with it. They'll increase it. But another strategy that's really good is if you have a counter offer from another company. So you see which one has the higher compensation and you bring that to the one with the lower compensation, and then they'll like match you. If you're lucky, they might even like increase it to more than match. Yeah. But usually they don't do that. They just like match it because there's no reason to. Yeah. And then so like a little tip, companies that are like well known, that most people want to go work for them, they will always match. And then for companies who need more engineers and they don't have the brand capital as much, they might give you like more compensation to try to compensate for like the brand. So what you can do is you could like understand which companies actually pay more, and then you apply for them. And then you get their high offer, and then make the big company, or like not the big companies, the one of the good brands to like match it. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So about the compensation that those recruiters give you, could you get into like specific numbers?
Oh yeah, sure. I don't mind. So yeah, I'll talk about like 2 different offers I've had, and then so one of the offer I remember was like around, I guess I don't remember the breakdown, but I think it's like 170 to 180 total compensation, right? And then I just asked for more, and then I was able to get like 200,000 total compensation, right? Yeah, and then I got an offer from another company that company paid more because like their total compensation was like, I think it was like 220 or 230. So I just brought that to the other company, and then the other company was able to match it to like 230K.
Wow.
Total compensation. And then I brought that back to the other company, and then that company was able to increase it by like 10K, so it was like 240 or whatever. And then I brought that back to the other company, and then the other company was able to match 240, and then I just took it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was basically like a big brand company versus a company
Smaller-ish
with
kind of.
smaller-ish company.
Yeah, I'd say it's still big-ish. Basically, both of them are public, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question I have is, so you mentioned that you felt burnt out, a little bit depressed, but what do you think made you burnt out and depressed?
Yeah. So yeah, it was the combination of like stress for my videos and work. Basically what I felt like was, every time I went home at a hard day at work, it's not like I could relax because I have to think about videos again. So I think because of that, I also put artificial stress on me, always looking at the metrics, like how many views I'm getting. Oh no, I'm losing, or like I'm not getting as much subscribers anymore. So that took a toll on like my mental health, and then that's why I burnt out, and I decided to take a break after that. Yeah.
Right. And how did you get through this tough time?
Yeah. I think it was actually really hard because like when you burnt out, or then I got kind of like really sad at one point. And then it's kind of like a vicious circle, right? Because you're sad, you have like lower confidence, and then you don't do as well, like you don't do as well just socializing. Things become harder. You don't want to socialize, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to go out, right? And then, but I read a lot of things online. They told me to just move. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you're not just always in bed, because that's very dangerous, right? So they told me to just move, even if you don't want to. So the first thing I did was like, okay, whenever I have time, for example, I was lead coding too. Whenever I don't want to lead code anymore, I would just like run outside for like 30 minutes. Or if I don't want to, work at work, then I would just run outside. So at least it gave me exercise. Yeah, so I was just making sure that at least if my physical health is good, then everything else comes second. So I just prioritized my physical health. And then I think that really helped because it just made me more clear in my mind. And then slowly but surely, I focused on the small wins in my life. And then I realized like, okay, this is actually not that bad. I always think about, back then, if I think about my life right now, I'd be pretty happy with it. And then just being more realistic with the view on your life. Because when you're sad, like it feels like a cloud, and you have like a bad perception of everything. Yeah. So you just have to break that cycle.
I see. So it was basically exercise, moving your body.
Oh yeah, like hang out with friends,
Yeah.
even if you don't want to.
Even if you don't want to.
Yeah, I think so, because like you don't want to do anything when you're sad, but like you just have to force yourself to do it. Like if you do feel good afterwards, then you know that it was worth it. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so now you're feeling much better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now that you're sort of back on your feet, what do you think you're gonna do with your channel?
Yeah, so I think with my channel, I'm not gonna put as much emphasis on my channel as before, because back then I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be a YouTuber. I put too much pressure on myself. Now it's kind of like, okay, I want to interview a lot of people, because one, I get to learn a lot from them, and I could be more casual about it. I could show who I am, like for real. Because like sometimes I do feel like on my videos I'm artificially like trying to be someone else or something like that.
Right.
Now I kind of just want to be more myself and show who I am for reals. So yeah, so I think there's gonna be like more interviews. There's gonna be more me talking to the camera. And then hopefully when I have time, I kind of want to restart like the startup series.
Nice.
I guess I could talk about one thing that I haven't told anyone, but like I was thinking of season 2 of startup series. It won't be called startup anymore. It will be like boot camp, where because my startup failed, and then what I'll do is I want to go into coding boot camp to get a job later. Anyway, yeah,
that'd be cool.
That would be the series, yeah.
That'd be cool.
And it would be like anime themed, because do you watch anime?
Yeah.
So you know, like Hero Academia.
Yeah.
Basically, kind of like that. You know, the boot camp would be kind of like Hero Academia. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. All right. I have 2 more questions left. The first one is there anything that you've changed your mind about within the past few years?
Right. Yeah, I think just like my values have changed. Like back then, it was always like trying to reach for the next milestone. You know, like it could be subscribers or monetary and stuff like that. I think the biggest difference now is trying to understand that you have to have like values that you really care about, that or like goals that you don't just reach and be done with it, but goals that make you a better person. Like for example, you know, you want to be a more honest person, or you want, you know, to have strengthen your relationships with like everyone and stuff like that. Things that you can't reach and say like, oh, now what? I'm done. But things that even working towards it, it's something valuable and fruitful for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Are those like actually your goals?
Yeah, I think so. Well, like one of like my goals is just to have as many stories to tell as possible. It sounds silly, but it kind of makes sense because like, you know, like I still want to, you know, succeed in life, because if you succeed in life, you have more stories to tell. You have more freedom to do a lot of different things, because having a lot of stories to tell or having a lot of memory anchors in your life, it makes you feel like your life is longer. Because imagine if you just worked at a job for 2 years and you didn't do anything else, then you kind of don't remember your days anymore because nothing special happened.
Yeah.
But if you've had a lot of different anchors in your life, like for example, even sometimes negative anchors, like, oh, you broke up with X, then you kind of remember it, but at least there's a lot of things that's happening in your life, right?
Wow.
So that's kind of like my life philosophy. Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Actually, my other question was going to be, do you have any life philosophy? But it sounds like...
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up this part of the interview. In case you want to watch the part of this interview where we talked about data science, you know, about what it's like to be a data scientist and how to become one, I'm going to put a link to that video in the description below. And thank you as always for watching my videos. I'll see you guys in the next one.